Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula, and Johnny Sue is still spinning on those ones and twos. So today with us, we have a great guest. Our guest is a teacher, an activist, a mother, and a high school track star. She's also running for the general election for California Assembly District 64. With us today is Fatima Iqbal-Zubair. Did I say it right?
Almost. The last part was a little Fatima Iqbal-Zubair.
Zubair. I went
Yes.
Zubar. See, I got I'm so sorry. My
Right.
tongue started rolling. I get that way sometimes. I should just say it normally and stuff. But, I'm excited that you're here today. You're also a fellow New Yorker. You lived in New York for a while. I did back
New
in the
Jersey.
days.
New Jersey,
So,
New Jersey.
what's that?
I lived in New Jersey.
What part?
Bergen County.
Ah, really?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a nice area. My friend lives in Bergen County.
Mhm.
Cory Booker fan?
Mm.
That's okay. Either am I. He's from Bergen County. He always says neighborhoods like mine, like he grew up in Newark or something.
Right,
He didn't. He
right.
grew up in Bergen County. So tell me this. Why did you decide to run for office?
Right. And how much time do I have to answer these questions?
You know what?
Uh,
I got about 12 questions on the board.
okay.
So let's keep it about 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's, I'll keep it at 2 minutes. So, I like we were talking, I think it's just things in our life that come in our path, right? That sometimes tell us we need to go this way. So I didn't determine 3 years ago that I wanted to run for office, right? My journey, I think, really started, when I became a teacher in Watts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I knew, like I was a coach before that, I was a tutor, and I knew that I loved working with students from lower income communities because I wanted to bring resources and I just sensed a resilience and perseverance in these students that is unique, right? And so I was drawn and I invested myself in this job. I spent more time there than I did at home. I
Mm-hmm.
started a robotics team there, the first that Watts has seen, competed in all over California. Um, was department chair. So when I did all these roles, I was, obviously trying to bring even more resources, and I can't kind of hit up roadblocks, right? In terms of like, for example, with my robotics team, I had to kind of fully fund that from private grants. The district couldn't give me any money. When I wanted to bring, I was a science teacher. When I wanted to bring project-based learning resources, it was like, wait, no, we don't have the money for it. Whereas I saw other schools, that like one that my husband mentors at, getting all these programs, right? And so you start thinking about this inequity. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I'll just have to build up in my students an army of advocates, right? So when they go to college and they graduate, they'll come back, they'll fight even more. At the same time, at 2016, Bernie Sanders was running and, you know, really brought to light to me the influence of money in politics, people powered politics, right? Something that I think a lot of us hadn't thought of before his message came through. I was like, who's this crazy guy on TV, right? Like that's what I thought when I first saw him, right? And so that kind of started putting two and two together, like, okay, well, why are things the way they are? And I started looking deeper, talking to community members, seeing there's a lot of distrust, got involved in environmental activism. And I learned that people just got to a point in my district, honestly, that they were organizing on their own and they kind of partly gave up on advocating to their legislator or their city council member,
Yeah.
right? Because they just were like, it doesn't work, but we can do this on our own. And so that's what I heard a lot. And I'm like, well, simple stories like, you know what? What if you had a representative that worked with you, right? That just listened to you and didn't come in with their own agenda, but truly listened to what you wanted, was not tone deaf, and just took those policies up and gave you the resources you need to execute them on a larger level than what
Yeah.
you're even doing now. And I want to make people believe that. I think we did a little bit in the primary, and we want to do that more towards the general.
You
So,
know what? I said I was excited
mhm.
about this interview, and you're already delivering because, yeah, I say at the same time all the time. Why don't we just get a representative who listens to us, doesn't come in
Right.
with
What
a
a
predetermined
concept.
plan? Yeah, doesn't want to be a career politician. And
Right.
you heard that call from Bernie Sanders back in 2016. So do we. When I heard Bernie
Right.
Sanders say that, hey, we need more people to run. I also heard him say we need our own, media, all independent media to cover the issues
Right.
we have. And
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So I met a lot of people like yourself,
Yeah.
activists out there on the trail, out there in the movement, and I love what's becoming. But we're going to talk more about what needs to be done in the future. So tell me right now, though, because you have an amazing story. I think you were born in Sri Lanka, you lived in Dubai, you moved to Canada, you eventually came to the States. You were a high
Yeah.
school track star, right? You
Right.
coached. You wanted to be a doctor. You went to medical school, but you
Right.
realized your real calling was teaching. So you went back, got your teacher's credential, and here we are today. But you
Right.
said through your time of tutoring, you would drive through your neighborhoods and you would see the reallocation of resources would be a little bit
Right.
favorable to the people who, weren't, people of color, like with these areas
Right.
and you talk about systemic racism and stuff,
Mhm.
but you make it more than just about the way we talk to each other or treat each other. You really kind of connect the dots as far as, economic warfare and whatnot. Can you explain
Right.
to us
Right.
what your most pressing issue in your district is and what you would address first?
Yeah. I love this interview so far, by the way. You're asking all the right questions.
I did my
Okay, thank
homework.
you. Yeah, yeah. Really good question. So yeah, the most pressing issue, and I don't want to like, keep beating down this point, is just getting a representative that listens to the needs of the community. So to me, getting money out of politics is a huge thing. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone in my district, whether from at any level, who's run without taking oil money, who's run without taking corporate money. I'm one of the first candidates, if not like, I mean, I can think of one other, and I'm not gonna, call his name out here, maybe that started doing it, but I'm the only one that's doing it consistently. And what a concept, right? Because to me, a lot of this, the reasons why representatives don't listen, I don't think it's inherently that they went into office and they were just bad people. I really don't think that's what it is. I think it changes them, right?
Yes.
When you look at the special interests, when you look at the corporate donations, when you look at, like honestly, like these trips you can take, when you look at, you probably maybe think of your family and you think of, well, I need these, I deserve this, right? But that's how you get lost in being detached from the community. So that's what I think the most pressing issue is. It's really getting the special interests out of politics and money out of politics, because then all you're really caring about is getting the vote of the people and the support of the people. And I'm sure later on we'll talk about the issues that follow from that. But I think that is the root of the problem.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
But let me ask you a question. People look at your website, they read who you are. What's
Right.
more important to you, Fatima? Racial justice or economic justice? Yeah, tough one.
Oh my God. Oh, first time that's question been asked to me. Okay.
Of
I have
course.
to pick one. I have to pick one, right? Okay.
I'm not. Listen, if you think they're equally important, you tell me that. Whatever you,
Well,
I'm coming to you right now. I know a lot of
okay.
people in your district are
Yeah,
going to say that racial justice is the most important thing, ending systemic racism. But you also got parts of Long Beach. You got Carson over there.
I do.
You got the
I do.
stadium. You got
I'm
some business people over
You're
there.
right. You're right. You're
All
right.
right.
I'm gonna say economic, and I thought about this when you're asking me, and I'll tell you why. Okay, I think racial justice falls under economic justice, right? In a sense, right? Because if you look at, because my district is also very interesting. For example, if you look at, let's say, like African Americans in Carson, for example, right? African Americans in Carson are actually like more better off than African Americans in Watts, right? And then you look at the Latino population in Carson, they're lower income than the African American population. So you have like these nuances of like, even like where you might see a black individual that's more wealthy than a white individual. That happens in Carson. But I would say like, you know so that's why I would fight for economic justice more, because to me, if you fight for economic justice and you achieve these things where you break these barriers, I feel like it would kind of level the playing field. And when you do have those black and brown folks, right, um and sometimes those white folks, like in Carson, we have, poor white folks living in mobile park homes, right? Then I would say that economic justice is more important. And you know what, Pasta? I think this is an evolution in the way I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because I know people are going to look at my campaign slogan and be like, she's talking about economic justice, but her whole slogan is break the chains of systemic racism, right?
Hmm.
And I think this is the growth I've had in listening to the people of this district. Now, don't get me wrong, though, the majority of the people in my district who are lower income are also Black and Latino. So that part of racial justice still holds true, but I've evolved. I evolved as a candidate, and I'm able to think about these issues in more nuanced ways. And I've learned about Carson. I've learned about these cities like I never had the chance to learn when I was just a teacher in Watts.
Yeah.
And so the honest truth is, I would fight for economic justice.
I
Right.
think that's the
And
right answer too, Fatima,
right.
because me
Yeah.
personally, and I'm an old school guy. I'm an Italian guy from New York. We lived in New
Right.
York and stuff. What's the best way to bring people together? I mean, we could say there's racial inequality and say you
Right.
need to stop that, or we
Right.
can give everybody economics. So now they're relaxed a little bit, right? Now
Right.
we're not blaming the person across the street who looks different than us for
Right.
our economic woes. Now we got money. Now we can break bread together. We can have dinner together. Our children go to school together. So I believe economic justice is a way of repairing, a natural way of repairing the racial inequities, because I'm a food guy. If we sit down, we share each other's culture. I make you some good pasta, you make me some of your good food. That will naturally bring it together, rather than somebody over there saying we need to stop doing that. Like the California Democratic Party, they don't get it. They just don't get it. But with that being said, and I love your answer too, and I love this interview so far.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
on your page, you'll see all those social justices you talk about, the homeless crisis, the
Right.
environmental justice, education reform on every levels. But what are some of your plans to generate income to the poor and middle-class working people in your district?
Right. Great question. That's a multifaceted systemic question. And to me, it starts with education. Like that is one level of that answer, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you don't have equal access to education, like I know when I worked as a STEM teacher, I knew the statistic back then that 80% of the jobs in this coming decade are going to be in STEM fields, right? Now, if you look at STEM jobs, yes, but this is the thing, there is trade school jobs, and I'm for those too, but you want to give people equal access to achieve any job that they want, right? And that means that they have to have access to a college degree, right? They have to have access to good public education, right? And so I think that is one way of really bringing jobs. Because when you have, for example, my district, the median income is very low, much lower. And like, for example, in many places in the district, it's like 10% or less that have a college degree, right? So now that cuts off all the jobs they can get. So when you talk about job creation, it's like, well, are people set up to get these great jobs that are being created in the tech field? And the answer is they're not, right? So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is also helping out small businesses, right?
There you
So
go.
right now I hear across the district that it's very, very difficult to start a small business. And unfortunately, this brings into play like displacement happening, because there's a lot of distrust with community members. When you see big corporate chains coming in like Planet Fitness, like, and I even heard one of my students criticize, what was it? An ice cream chain. I forget. It was one of those big ice cream chains coming into Watts. And they're like, I'm like, aren't you excited? You're going to get ice. They're like, yeah, but it's another like, it's taking business away. And these were kids saying it, like the mom and pop's ice cream shop now down the street is going to get out of business, right? So I think we have to support these mom and pop shops being developed, because they tend to hire locally. So there
Yep.
we go, job creation. Whereas the corporate entities, their best interest is not for community growth, and the money's not going back to the community. So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
would say, yeah, supporting small businesses, making sure you break down any educational barriers,
Yeah.
are two really, really big things.
I pictured you talking to a student, young Latin student, that you gave him confidence, right? And that person now, but they have a parent that might need that same confidence to
Right.
buy that small restaurant, to buy that small business. And, a lot of the rules and the red tape will be so overbearing. So I was
Right.
always like, if we can find a way to educate and possibly find access to money for these small business and the people in our community, restaurants, retail, anything, ice cream stores, then we can do so much more. And I think that's something we have to keep an eye on. And I'm glad you mentioned small businesses because it's important.
Yeah,
On
and
your live
and it's
stream,
yeah,
sorry, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, no,
I
no,
was
finish up.
no, I was just gonna say it's the reason, like, I know these things because I talk to people on the ground, like the Chamber of Commerce's in each of these districts that tell me about the struggles that the businesses are having, especially now. I'm sure we're gonna get into COVID a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's a big struggle. But yeah,
Well,
go on. Yeah,
that's something I wanted to see a little bit more out of your website. From my, when I was
yeah,
cherry picking, like, where can we improve on? I wanted to
right.
see you in like
I
a
agree.
business attire out somewhere
Okay.
in a small
I'm
business.
gonna take notes on that, and I hope my staff is listening that they're gonna take notes. Yeah.
Because
No,
because
thank
you
you.
are you're very nuanced. I watched some of your videos. I watched the way you talk. And listen, we had candidate month in January. We interviewed 16 candidates in the month of January, and I don't think I've been as excited for
Aw,
an interview as much as this interview, except when I
right,
interviewed a libertarian on the other side when I knew it was going to be push and pull, and that was going to be fun. But like I
right.
said, you're very, very nuanced, and I looked at your competitor too, Mike Gibson. We'll get into that character down the road
Oh,
right now and
yes,
stuff like that.
please, please.
But let's talk about this right now. On your live stream last week when you were talking, I think his name was Manny. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Martin.
Martin. You talked about the legislation in California being predominantly Democrat. Okay. However, we don't have health care for all here. Why not, Fatima?
I don't mean to say it over and over again. It's because the influence of money in politics, right? It breaks my heart sometimes when I look at these progressive Dems up there that are taking money from pharmaceutical industries, that are taking money from these drug companies, from insurance
Who
companies.
in particular?
You mean to name people?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, really, if you ask me why we don't have universal health care in California, I can say one person's name and tell you why.
yeah. Well, I know Maria Estrada, this is one of her top issues. And I know she told me, and I know it's true, that when they had the chance to pass Medicare for all, like Anthony Rendon and Democrats, I think in general, I don't even want to name one person, not because I wouldn't, but
Eh,
because I don't,
you
there
already
wasn't a
did.
single Democrat that really stood up for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I mean, so that is why we don't have it, because of the influence of money. And like, because if you look at what we have right now with Medi-Cal, right? Like I know a lot of community members, a lot of my students and their families were on it. it doesn't cover a lot. It doesn't cover mental health care. It doesn't cover like a lot of pre-existing conditions. There's a lot of things it doesn't cover. And it's like, why not? And honestly, that's why, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, that was one thing I noticed. Like, you were very, and I want to say Bernie-esque, where you were very kind. We had a guest, Shahid Buttar, last week. Same kind of thing. And I don't expect you to be like Maria Estrada on everything. But there are certain issues that, like, we expect you to call out the corruption where it is. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And I think it's quite okay.
Right.
Anthony Rendon shelved that bill, and he deserves to be called
right.
out. You want to call out Gavin Newsom for not acting right now, too, as well? And then what he also did with COVID? We'll get into it, but I think it's okay. Like I said, you don't have to get completely savage, but it's okay to call some people out. And in this particular case, California, that's supposed to be leading the way for progressives across the country, well, Anthony Rendon shelved that bill. So, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Let me ask you another question. You often talked about undocumented workers and the way they are mistreated. You even stated on the stimulus bill that they were left out in the cold, and they're given nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I love that, too, because I was pointing that out from the get-go when Rashida Tlaib put forth the Boost Act. She was trying to include immigrants in there because in this particular situation, so say you're not compassionate progressives like us. Say you're a libertarian, but it's smart to want to take care of undocumented workers here right now because with the COVID problem, their problem is our problem. Right. Unless we all heal globally, we don't heal. But let me ask you a question. In your opinion, what is the main cause of mass migration to the United States?
Great question. I think this goes further back. I was thinking about like, the types of governments that are there, the fact that the police are like bribed, the fact that there's just a lot of danger out there. But I think this goes way back, and I can't speak on it because I'm not a historical expert, right? But I think it goes way back to when we created puppet governments and we interfere in South America and Central America. I want to say it starts with that because honestly, that's our policy, right? Yeah. America does that. Let's be honest, right? We've done this since the beginning of time. We go into countries, we mess it up, right? I was going to say another word, but I was like, right? We really do, right? And then we go for the sake of democracy, but we're obliterating, right? Obliterating the country. Like I talked to someone, a student I tutored, from a pretty good family. He was an Iraqi Christian, right? Yeah. And I was like, well, what do you think about this? This stuck in my mind. What do you think about what's happening in Iraq, right? And I thought he would say there would be some anti-Muslim sentiment or something, right? Because he was an Iraqi Christian. He's like, honestly, Saddam Hussein was an awful guy, right? But Iraq was beautiful then, and people had jobs, and they
had
were
a lot of Christians.
Huh?
Had a lot of Christians in Iraq under Saddam Hussein. I remember seeing a speech where Saddam said that they're Iraqi Christians, but they are Iraqi.
Right. And he said America came in and ruined it. And look at the country
totally
now.
Ruined it.
So I think that's really what I want to say. That's the root cause of it. If we left our nose out of South and Central America, right? And instead of interfering, maybe we're their allies, true allies though, and not trying to form puppet governments, I don't think any of this we would be where we're at. And now, like the fact that we're trying to, be so hard on immigrants, it's just a really wild thing to do, right?
That's my thing. It's like we caused the problem over there, and you got the answer 100% right because that is our wheelhouse, and I'm glad you worked through it. Because here's the thing: you might not have to make decisions on that when you're elected to the assembly, but it's your kids in your districts who are going to have to go off and fight these wars. And you lived in that region before, and you know all about it. So I mean, yeah, because I saw you were escaping war. That's why your family left. Yeah. Right.
And you know what's oh yeah, we were escaping the Gulf War. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm glad you worked it out in your mind and ended because it's going to be your kids that are going to have to go out and fight that. So that's why you should know about that, and you did figure it out. That's my personal opinion, and it's easy to follow those numbers because we get our nose in there, we start messing around, we put puppet covers in, so our corporations can have a resource extraction, and then all the migration comes here, and it's like we caused the problem, we should have to deal with it, The conservatives who talk against this, I guess they don't believe in individual responsibility. But who are you supporting for president?
Well, I support Bernie Sanders for president. I say that with sadness because I'm kind of mad at what has happened, and I'm wondering if he's gonna make it. But I still believe in him 100%. I'm still gonna fight for the things. He was a big source of inspiration. In fact, I have a poster to this day. There's another teacher that has my classroom right now of Bernie Sanders. In 2016, there was a canvas, I got him. I put it up in my class, right? And then I just wanted my students to understand what he really stood for, and it's still there, so.
Yeah. Well, it's what are the things that have disappointed you about him, real quick? Just quickly. I don't want you to get in too deep, but it sounds like there is some. What I'm trying to find out is that I understand that Bernie Sanders is the guy who inspired us to do that stuff, But right now, I feel that we have to take his movement on to the next level. Maybe without him. You know what I'm saying? I know people are kind of holding on for the presidency. I think the time to act is right now.
It is. Yeah.
I'm ready for, to put actions right now into play. But what is this something that maybe upsets you a little bit about Bernie without going into great detail?
Bernie Bernie didn't upset me. It's just and I know we were talking a little bit before that. It's just like I think one thing is like I think it's very scary. Let me preface this with this, right?
Okay.
Like this might get progressives angry who are watching, but I'm always very true to myself. It's very scary when we're in echo chambers on either end, whether we're on the Tea Party right, or the socialist left or the center, right? I hate labels because it takes away individualistic thinking. We need
Yes.
to be able to look at our inspiration and criticize him, right? So I want to start with that, right? If not, we're in a scary world, right? We're not
Got it.
challenging.
Got it.
So I think one thing like that I'm thinking about now is like, when we talk about like we don't hear this conversation on the national level, right? Like legalization of marijuana, for example, like I was mentioning, is good in a lot of ways because we know black and brown, black and Latino, men go to jail for that, and that is 100% true. But to me, the discussion, I guess, maybe that Bernie and other progressives can think about is how do we make sure that discussion about marijuana legalization isn't tone deaf, to the community, right? Um, I don't know if many progressives listening right now know this, right? But when we were legalizing marijuana in California, and because I learned this, there were a lot of people on the ground, community members who are progressives and liberal, but they saw this as a destruction of the community because they were like, the kids are already getting drugs, and like now they're not going to be able to learn in school even more. It was bad for them in terms of education. So I'm just saying, like, I still support decriminalizing marijuana. I think we shouldn't have people go to jail for that. Completely agree with that. But I'm just saying the discussion has to be more nuanced as to when we have a bill, are we including community voices? Right. That's what I'm saying. And I don't know if California did that with legalization of marijuana. Did they include community voices of people on the ground? Not someone from a representative's office, right? Who's not really in the community. Not that. Literally parents from the community, were they at the table?
Yeah.
Right. Who had kids?
They weren't. They
Right.
weren't. When it comes to the marijuana thing, we know it was
Right.
more of a trick to make it legal. I would wish they would have kept it in the medical marijuana because when they try to make it legal, what do? They start bringing in corporate cannabis and all the small business owners. I'd hope in a district like yours, we could have people of color owning these businesses and
Yeah.
making money on this business rather than them being exploited, locked up for marijuana, and
Right.
the
Right.
prison industrial complex make money off them. I wanted to see the tides turn, but here comes the city councils. What are they doing? They're giving it to the corporate marijuana. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you were a member of the House, United States House,
United
how
States
would
House.
you have voted on the Patriot Act and why?
Yeah. So the Patriot Act. So I'm running for state assembly though, right? But you're just curious on this.
Yeah, you're running for state assembly now. You might be running for a House later. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's going to be. I know you're not going to vote for the Patriot Act, but it's the ideology I want you to talk about.
Right.
Civil liberties.
This was like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm very honest. Like I wouldn't. This was when we were listening in, right, on people. It was that
Yes.
act, right?
The
Like when
Patriot Act came after
we
9/11, which allowed for expanding powers for governmental agencies like the FBI, CIA,
Right.
have further reasons to snoop and look in, and
Yeah. I'm okay, and I'm gonna think. I have an answer, but I want to just think, so I'm not like.
Yeah.
I would be I would be against it because I think it creates distrust in
Yeah.
community. Like I know I'm speaking as a Muslim, right? Like I'm careful when I answer this because like we had 9/11 happen, right?
Yeah.
And it was awful. Like I'm speaking like I might look Muslim, but just as much as I'm Muslim, I'm American and I'm Sri Lankan. I always tell people each of those identities, one's not more, one's not less, right?
Yeah.
I'm just as much American as I'm Muslim, and I would die for this country if I had to, you know.
Yes.
So that being said, when you ask me that question, I'm like, I have that anger of 9/11 in me too. I lived close to that when that happened, and uh, so it's hard though because it's like, what do we do, right, when we want to find the truth of something that happened, right? But I'm looking at it from the lens of a Muslim person as well. I see the hate that like my mom, like I didn't always wear hijab, but I saw the hate that my mom got from like the the governmental response to it, right? And like invade, like, weapons of mass destruction that weren't there and going into the wrong country. Like I saw what all these all this did for Islamophobia. So I don't think increased surveillance was the way to find the answer of who's to blame. Now, that doesn't mean that when someone attacks us, that we have to protect our people, right? We have to find the truth. So I'm for that, but I just think increased surveillance creates distrust, and it literally, like, it generates fear. I'm not about fear mongering, even
Yeah.
about things like climate change. Like I'm not about fear mongering. I'm about like fact finding and informing people. But fear mongering is, to me, is never the right way to do politics and to make society better.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
It's
it's an
people apart.
area where
Yeah.
a lot of progressives sometimes just don't pay attention to our civil liberties. And then we have progressives like myself who are all about civil liberties, and it kind of crosses party lines into where you make those bridges with libertarians. And once again, I know you're running for House Assembly and you didn't have time to read the Patriot Act, but I just wanted to dip into our civil liberties and stuff because I think
Right.
sometimes progressives don't think in that area and understand how important it is because, yeah, we have our set of core issues and our values that are important to us, but where do we cross? And in this particular sign, my partner who's not here with us today, she always makes fun of me being a libertarian because I have my civil liberty views, but I'm as progressive as the next person. I believe in Medicare for all. I want something like a Green New Deal. I don't want to pollute our water. But I think it's important to also pay attention to our civil liberties because it will come into play in your district about the way, they'll be pulling up warrants or the way they surveil stuff. And
Right.
I think it will come along a little bit more along down the road. It's not really so particular to what you're dealing with and you're running with the assembly right now, but you look like a candidate down the road who might be able to run for House. So I want to make sure our head's in that right area. So that's why I asked that question.
I appreciate
Aside
it.
from making sure that undocumented workers are taken care of in the next stimulus bill, if you were part of writing it or had a say in it, what other changes or adoptions to the next stimulus bill would you add to it?
Right. So yeah, definitely taking care of our immigrants. I know they had a promise of like helping small businesses, but it's limited, right? And I was just having this discussion over lunch with my husband, right? Because he comes at it, he doesn't work in the areas I do. And I said, who do you think is gonna like apply for those grants first, right? I
Yeah,
mean, and it's gonna run out. Like, why is there a limit? Because I know in that bill also we were helping out some corporations, right?
big time.
So it seemed like there was no limit to how much we helped them, but when it came to small business help, there was a limit. And that doesn't make sense to me. If anything, we should be helping small businesses more because they have less profits, right?
Yeah,
And so I would just expand like protections for small businesses. I would guarantee like testing, but I don't know if this is something that could have been done in a bill because I know there are folks right now, like it's very unorganized, right? They're getting bills when they thought the coronavirus test was free. So just like guarantee like free testing, right? For everyone that it is in fact going to be free.
yeah,
Um, yeah. And what else? I'm thinking about like, I think just healthcare, right? Making sure, and like this is gonna sound pretty crazy, but just making sure if anyone needs treatment for this, that they're gonna get it. They're not gonna get a bill in the mail, like a surprise bill. They're not gonna get anything. That should be guaranteed in the package that we are in a pandemic. I mean, yes, I know you and me believe in Medicare for all, but in this case of a crisis, we should have that. And everyone should agree with that, including Republicans.
yeah.
Doesn't matter how you see healthcare, if it's different, fine. I can respect that. But we're in a crisis right now where, are you kidding me? There was just someone, an article I posted on my social media where we had, I believe, a 17-year-old that died because they couldn't afford to go to the doctor for COVID.
I know,
Like,
I know. It's disgusting. Yeah,
yeah, and and like we in a pandemic, healthcare should be
yeah,
guaranteed. So I would definitely add that in the bill as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, the first thing I would add is I would do a rent freeze for 90 days and a mortgage payment freeze for 90 days. Like,
Oh, that too. I
that's what
forgot
I would do. That's
I
like the
was just
first
posting
thing.
about
Yeah.
that on my social media. I forgot to mention that because today LA City Council had a meeting on that, and we were trying to demand that. It's on my
Yeah.
Twitter. But
Well, the whole thing is that the state of California can't tell the banks that they can't collect on their mortgages, and that means the mortgage people who rent the house have to, you know what I'm saying? But it's something that could be done federally. You know what I'm saying? It's something that could be done from the top. If Congress, along with the House, if the Senate and the House worked together with Donald Trump and said, hey, we need a 90-day freeze out there, but I don't think they'll do it because I think at the end of the day, they're being nefarious and even a little sinister to try to get these houses. Because I read an article the other day that says in about 6 months to a year, 30% of the mortgages will be in default. And here come the rich corporations and the banks buying up those houses like they did in 2008. So I don't think they'll do that, but I think that's the thing that's most necessary.
I hope that doesn't
Yeah.
happen though, like in 2008. Oh my God, another recession. Then it's like,
Yeah.
I really hope that doesn't happen.
If
Yeah.
Congress and the president don't act, though, in the interest for the 99 cents, though, do you think the people could resort to a general strike? And how would you feel about that? When I say general
Like
strike, that means
mass,
labor. Shut it down. Like,
right?
don't go to work. I always say general strike, rent strike, debt strike. Don't participate. Hold out until we get what we want. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. So you're talking about like a mass national strike where it's being done, right? In like,
Yeah.
honestly, what came to mind, the only kind of the pushback I have with that is it's again trying to just not be tone deaf to my constituents. I don't know, like I always think of things like striking and going to rallies as also a privilege. Is something I want to bring up because it's ironic the people that suffer most from like these issues, unfortunately, if they went on a strike for a day or two, they can't put food on the table. So I don't know, like it's ideally something that should happen, but like I don't know if like for example, like someone who takes care of my son, one of my past students, basis, I don't think her family could afford to do that. And it's sad. It's sad that the system's gone to that point, where
Yeah.
I want them to strike myself, and I'm like, I'd strike on their behalf because I can do that. But that's the only
Yeah.
thing I would worry about. Like, could these people who are most affected afford to strike right now?
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
if they
right now the climate is rich for it. It's right now we have this pandemic. People are at home. Companies are closed down, whatnot. There's small amounts of companies that are still open. Right now, in my opinion, like the first TED Talk that John made me watch, my engineer over here, was about people will follow you if they know why you're doing it. They follow you for why you're doing things. Now, we followed Bernie Sanders in the beginning because Medicare for all, Green New Deal, but more than anything, he was for workers' rights. He crossed the
right,
picket line for us. Right now, the time is ripe. If we are serious, and I had so many friends that were like, I'm ready to burn it all down in Wisconsin if they're going to cheat Bernie Sanders. I'm getting ready to get arrested. I'm like, well,
right,
now here's the time is right.
right.
It's ripe. Not even right. It's ripe. Like a beautiful piece of fruit. Let's do it now. Because now we don't have to worry about those things because now, guess what? Businesses are closed down. But so, I mean, I would look into it. Things are warming up on a rent strike, on a
Well,
general strike. And
I think, this is bringing out all the inequities and like it's honestly popularizing Bernie's policies, right?
yeah,
All of a sudden, even modern Democrats are like, yeah, why are people dying? I'm like, well, that's why we're for healthcare for all.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But they
100%.
still got away with a corporate giveaway. I was very upset that was 96-0 in the Senate. It should have been 94-2. And Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren should have been sitting there go, nope, no way. We're not going to give all this money with no strings attached. The $500 billion versus $350 billion for small
Right.
businesses. $500 billion went to corporations.
Right.
No strings attached. Mnuchin and Trump are going to decide who gets that money. This is ridiculous. Let's talk about two other things before we get you out of here real quick. Number one, here out of the two things. On a scale of 1 to 10, Fatima, rate our country's current election system as far as representing the will of the people. Our
Is one real
current
bad?
election system, our voting system.
Okay. Is
1 is
like,
bad, 10 is good.
and this is on every level. It's a general question on voting.
Yep.
Um, we're at like a 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Is there a reason why you said 4?
Yeah, because I know there's still a lot of voter suppression and that like
Yes.
I'm for like same day voter registration. I'm for like automatic voter registration for 18-year-olds, like something, all those things that aren't there right now. And that we think about why do we make it harder? Like young people are already like not fully understand, but like let's make it easy for them to vote. We
Exactly.
should have vote by mail to every person's house right now. Like that's something automatic that actually should be like, okay, look, whether we're in COVID or not, everyone should just get a vote by mail ballot, right? Like let's make it really easy.
Yeah.
So that's why I rated it as such. But at the same time, I was also thinking about the other countries I grew up in. At least we have the right to vote. That's why I gave it a 4. I was like, at least we have the right to vote. So that's good because a lot of countries still don't.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not at the best by far.
Well, the reason why I asked a lot of these questions too as well is because, we talk about like, progressive needs, progressive wants, and libertarians because they have a lot of things where they're in common. And, for me, my most important, my two most important things are topics, issues, whatever you say, are civil liberties and election integrity. Because I firmly believe that if you want a Green New Deal, you can't get it without election integrity. You know why? Because they'll always cheat. They won't give us the representatives. They won't get the endorsed Sunrise Movement candidate in yourself.
Right.
If we can cheat the elections and we'll never get the representation. Instead, we'll get incumbents like Mike Gibson to continue to win. And this guy's a character. He's a friend of the speaker. I went and watched some of his videos. Let me tell you something. I got into your videos. They were a lot more easier to watch. This guy is all over the place. I know you don't like to trash people, but tell us a little bit about Mr. Mike over here.
Oh my God, where do I start?
This guy's a character.
Yeah.
You know, he throws out all these fugazi bullshit bills that he brags about. We got this bill. Like, give me a good bill to brag about. Give me something juicy. Pass Medicare for all in California.
Right.
Pass the serious bills, right?
Yeah. So that's what I'm about, right? Like, we are in the 6th or 7th poorest district. Like, what have you done to change the trajectory? And like, that's my argument. I don't know if you saw my debate with him. Like, honestly, air quality is worse in our district. Homelessness is worse. Schools are worse. Like, and it's like, yeah, it hasn't worked. I mean, okay, so I'm going to be really honest here because this is a really authentic interview. You know what
Yeah.
bothers me the most? I could talk about bills, but character is really important in a representative, right? If you have the right moral character, it means that you're probably everything else is going to follow through, right? You're going to think
Yeah.
about, okay, so this is the thing. I was actually Gibson's commissioner for briefly, education commissioner.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I did my
Yeah.
homework on you.
You did do all your homework then.
God, I watched videos. All right, so you know him a little bit better than anybody else, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was brief because like it was like May or something, I think in 2018, but what happened was I was basically part of the education commission, and I was really excited to get it, right? I was like, oh man, like I'm gonna get to be a voice, right? Like be the people's voice and like because at this point I didn't know Gibson's record. So I was very like naive and like, right? As a glass eyes is what they call it. I didn't know it. I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I remember that day I sat at the table and he came. I was like, oh, I'm at a good table. I'm with the representative, right? Okay. So then I go to these meetings, right? And I'm like, I'm the type of person, I'm like, okay, let's look at funding. Let's look at votes, right? It wasn't that. It's like, oh, here's a flyer for Gibson's event to hand out. And then some of the meetings, like I was emailing like, oh, when's the meeting happening? It was very poorly planned. Later on, I talked to other commissioners, like, were you guys having this experience? They're like, yeah, it's just an honorary thing. Like, it's not really, you don't really, And so I got to the point where I was really quiet in these meetings. And like, because if I can't speak authentically, I don't speak at all. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
you know what? Let me remove myself from the space. It was one of the reasons I wanted to run because I'm like, I knew if I was a representative and I had commissioners and I had community leaders, I would be listening to their voice, right? And I would be like, if I made a wrong decision, I would be humble to say, I'm sorry, I wasn't informed. Let me fix this for you. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was. And it's because it's okay. You're not supposed to know everything. I might not know everything about legislation, but say I'm sorry. Say I hear you. And this is what I'm going to do different next time. And it wasn't that. So I can go on talk more about Gibson, but I heard here from environmental community people in the district that on some of his votes, I don't know if you looked at his current score in previous years, right? Who were trying to phone his office over a bill and the office literally unplugged the phone. Like that's how inaccessible they were.
Yeah.
Gibson arguing with people over like, when they're trying to advocate. And to me, like the other thing is when I was in the Progressive Dem Club like debate with him, right? Was and I don't mean to bring this up, but and my husband's always like, you don't need to say that. But to me, it says a lot about character, right? Something civil, you shake someone's hand when they walk in, right?
Of
You're
course.
running for office. Yeah, he didn't really shake my hand. He kind of just, slid.
So you had a debate. Have you had a debate with him yet as a
You watch
candidate?
that video? How's
No,
that?
I haven't. I'm gonna watch that one. But have you had a debate with him as a candidate?
Yes.
I'm gonna go watch those debates.
Yeah. Progressive Dem Club debate. Yeah. I got 70% of the Progressive Dem Club endorsement after that. So
Do you guys have another debate
because
scheduled?
possibly they thought I was a quiet,
Huh.
a quiet teacher. I'm a hijabi. They probably thought I would be outspoken, but I was very loud and outspoken, and so I kind of threw them off a little bit, which I'm happy with. I
Yeah.
like,
They
but I would,
underestimated the New York in you.
yeah, Andres, you're exactly. But the thing is this:
The Jersey. Sorry.
I'm a respectful person, but part of my faith teaches me that the only person I'm afraid of is God. I'm not afraid of the president. I'm not afraid. If you have power, that doesn't scare me one bit. I'm just as scared of like someone in power as I'm of like my mom and dad. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make a difference to me. That's the type of person I am. So anyway, I called him on a lot of his bills, but the bottom line is he didn't shake my hand. He interrupted me when it was my time. And at the end, I thanked him, right? I was like, thank you, Assemblymember Gibson, for this dialogue, right? Didn't thank me, and it's fine, but it just, to me, Pasta, that I could talk to you talking about his policies, but to me, character is everything.
No, I hear you.
To
That
me,
guy's got a lack of it.
yeah,
That guy's
and
got a
to me,
lack of it.
yeah, and I
He's
don't
a
know if you saw that in the video.
grandstander.
Huh?
He's a grandstander. He's an
Oh,
establishment lackey. Really, he's an establishment little. He was bragging about Gavin Newsom, and it was just sounding like a bullshit like beauty pageant speech he was giving almost. I can't stand the guy. So,
yeah, and you know what, Pasta? That's the thing, right? What it says about characters. If you are treating me like that as a candidate, that tells me you feel entitled, and that tells me you're not humble enough to be for the people. And I
Exactly.
agree with you. Why are you always arguing with Gavin Newsom? You shouldn't be. Like,
Yeah. You should be
honestly, you
holding
should
him
be
accountable. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You should be more for your people, not for Gavin Newsom. Like, yes, be for Gavin Newsom on things that he's doing right, but for things that he's doing wrong, you should be challenging him on that. You
Absolutely.
know?
And there's a lot of things that challenge him. If I met Gavin Newsom, I was like, hey, Gavin, nice to meet you. What are you going to do about universal health care in California? Be my first question. You're the new governor. A lot of people said that the speaker didn't want to embarrass Jerry Brown. That's why he didn't send it over. So it was in the legislation. Well, what are you doing, Mr. Gavin Newsom? And now all of a sudden with the homelessness, when there's a COVID crisis, now you can get people. Day one, you go into office in California with the homelessness problem in San Francisco, San Diego, California, Orange County, Los Angeles. You declare a a state emergency, that California has a homelessness problem and we have to solve it immediately. We need more people like you in office.
Thank you, Pasta. I appreciate I always speak truth. So
Well, I'm going to give you a minute to tell us, to close out and tell us, Fatima, why you should be our assembly person, and also tell people where they can find you.
okay, I
Give you a few
appreciate it.
bucks.
Yeah, of course. I really, really enjoy this interview. It's probably honestly my most fun interview. If I,
I'm
it was
glad.
really fun. It was really fun. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for everything. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind that I want people to remember about me is that it's not really about me, but it's about if they want a representative, right? That when the bill crosses their table and when they're writing a bill, where is their mind, right? Is their mind with the special interest? Is their mind with just with Gavin Newsom? Is their mind with the status quo, with the Democratic establishment? Or is their mind with the people in their community that are hardest hit? And I know for me, that's where my mind will be. And I know that's why, for example, my husband like wanted me to run before I wanted to run because he knows me the best of anyone. And he knows that's where my mind is. And he knows that even if there's a decision that's difficult to make that might make me go against my friends, that I would do it because that's what I've done in the past, you know? So I think that's what's important about my campaign, and that's why I'm doing it because we lack that in politics right now. We lack basic decency, we lack basic morality, we lack people speaking truth to power. And I think where people can find me, right? So FatimaForAssembly.com. But I know my staff, I think, is watching on some of your channels. So I hope they're listening around, they're gonna be posting my link because as a grassroots candidate, I gotta ask it, we do need donations as
Absolutely.
well. We are donating 10% of what we make though each week to a local nonprofit who's doing COVID efforts on the ground too. So your money's going to also part of it's going to go to a good place. But yeah, hopefully they're going to post it in all these avenues. But yeah, I'm on Act Blue, so it's really easy. So the link should be wherever you guys are watching. But I also
Yeah.
want to tell people follow me on Facebook, Fatima for Assembly, Instagram, Fatima for Assembly, Twitter, Fatima for Assembly with the number 4, because you could access me there. I'm a very accessible candidate. If you want to talk to me about anything,
Yeah.
just hit me up.
Fatima Iqbal-Zubair, running for California Assembly District 64. I think I got the name right. And
Yes.
I just like to say the first thing I saw you ask money for was to help some of the undocumented workers who aren't getting any of that stimulus money. And I thought that was great. Before you asked for money for your own campaign, you were
Right.
asking money for them. And we pointed out on this show that, they left undocumented workers out in the cold. Literally, in the neighborhood I live, we can hear the elote guy and the ice cream guy out there because you know why? They can't stop. They don't have that check coming in. And they're going to be left out in the cold. And it's not fair that we did that. And I'm glad you are truly fighting for people, for social justice, for racial justice, for economic justice. You got all the tools you need. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck. Will you come back on the show again with us when you
I
win?
would love to. This was so much fun.
Then,
Yes.
do you have any more debates scheduled online with Mr. Mike Gibson?
I don't. I have my virtual town halls every Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
But I'm telling my team, and if you know of any connection, I'd love to be in a forum with him again because even if it's virtual,
We'll host a debate. If he wants to, we can host an online COVID
invite
debate.
him,
We
please.
both could do that, but I doubt he will.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to me it's about it's I'm in my mind, I'm not like, oh man, I can't wait, right? To like,
Yeah.
give it to him, right? It's not like that, but to me, it's good for democracy, right? When we have more of these debates, it's how elections should be run, right?
Yeah.
It should be run with equal access to knowledge. There might be some points he gets me on, there might be points I get him on, right?
Exactly.
But at least people have the knowledge. So
Yeah, people should have the right to know the differences between the two candidates, but that's the thing with the Democratic establishment, especially in California. Their main goal is to ignore progressives because they don't want to give progressives any attention, any play, any notoriety whatsoever. So that's what they do. We were scheduled to moderate a debate between Jimmy Gomez and Kenneth Mejia. Would you believe me if I told you that Jimmy Gomez didn't show up?
I'm not surprised. Let me just say it that way.
Well, Mike's going to do the same thing to you because he he can only hurt himself, I think, if he goes toe to toe with you, because on character and on the principle and on the issues, you're on the right side. Thank you for
Thank you,
joining us
Pastor. I
today.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Go help her out,
Eat
ladies and
something
gentlemen, for
healthy.
Pastor Jardula. And Jonny Sue on the ones and twos. Did you have a question or no? We'll see you later. Convo out.
Thank you.